Today we will be doing a recap on Wistoria, Wand and Sword. This is the first episode, Like a Lone Sword. So in this episode, we will meet Will, who is battling monsters on the seventh floor of a dungeon. The monsters are no challenge for Will, who easily dispatches them. And then at Rigarden Magical Academy, a class is having a lecture on magic by Edward Serfort, and Professor Edward decides to call Will Serfort to the front of class. Will makes his way to the front of class and fails to make a fire, which makes the class erupt in laughter. Professor Edward makes little digs at Will before classmate goes out of his way to create the flames that Will struggled to do. Theon Ulster is told off for doing this, and then Professor Edward goes back to making his little digs at Will and telling him outright to drop out of school. After class, Theon and his cronies also try to bully Will and tell him to drop out of school before being interrupted by Colette's law. While walking down the halls, Will comments that it's nice to have a cute girl like Colette come to his defense. She gets embarrassed and asks if he compliments all the girls he speaks to. Will looks up at the tower, admiring its beauty. We find out that the Magyavanda are at the top of the tower and they are responsible for upholding the sky. Long ago, they were trapped in darkness and terrorized by a celestial host. Five wizards rose up against them and created a seal over the sky that brought peace to the world. Only the strongest can become part of the Magyavanda. Let wonders if the ice maiden Albusvina will be watching over them today, and Will is confident that she is sitting next to her window looking down at them. We flash back to a young Will in the garden with his friend. She is reading to him and telling him about what the real sky looks like. They make a promise to each other to become a Magyavanda to see the sunset together. The friend is none other than Albusvina, who was a prodigy and the youngest person to become a Magyavanda. Although Will is talentless when it comes to magic, he is still scrambling to keep his promise and to become a Magyavanda with his childhood friend. Will is being told off by Professor Wokner Nogram for going into the dungeon without permission. Professor Wokner tells Will that he currently doesn't stand a chance of becoming a student at the Upper Institute. As he is unable to get any credits for spell work due to his lack of magic, his reliance on dungeon diving would not be enough. He is told to focus on trying to graduate and that he needs to earn 4 credits by the end of the week. Now tells Will that he can get enough credit if he can defeat a Baskerville which has been said to be roaming around on the 6th floor of the dungeon. This is overheard by Theon, who takes his cronies to the dungeon with the plan of defeating the Baskerville themselves so that Will does not earn enough credits to graduate. However, while in the dungeon hunting for the Baskerville, they come across the evil sentinel that takes out the two cronies with Theon. Will overhears the screams and runs to see what is happening. He comes across Theon firing fire magic at the sentinel, which has no effect on the sentinel, which is making its way towards Theon. Will sees this, and at first he wonders why should he help the guy that keeps bullying him. As he thinks about it, he has a flashback of Albus telling him that he is kind. No longer hesitating, he draws his sword and runs to block the sword that was ready to slash Theon. Professor Edward has rushed into Professor Wokner's office and he tells him that he needs Professor Wokner to use his familiar to track down Theon and his cronies as they have gone into the dungeon without permission. Once Wokner hears that they are on the 6th floor, he tells Professor Edward not to worry as Will is there. He uses his crystal ball to project the battle that Will is having with the evil sentinel. He explains that Will is an outlier and that he has superhuman strength, a robust physique, and observational skills to grasp the enemy's strategies after seeing them once. Professor Edward can't believe what he's seeing, and the same could be said for Sion, who can't believe it is the same Will that he has been bullying. Will manages to defeat the Sentinel without any harm coming to himself or Sion. Sion and Professor Edward are mad at what they have just seen, especially Professor Edward, who doesn't believe that someone who can't use magic can surpass it. Back in Wokner's office, he is glaring at Will and does award him the 10 credits for defeating the Sentinel, granting him enough to graduate. I must admit, when I saw the trailer for this, I did think that the anime was going to be really good. And I am glad that I did take the time to watch it. Like, you got a bit of the history of what's happened in, the town where they're living. We get to hear about the Magyavanda, which is what quite a lot of the people are aspiring to be. And then we hear about Will, the guy that has no magic, who can surpass magic, and is able to take out all these monsters with just his body and sword. Like the way he was fighting is really good. He does seem to be like a mix of Mash as well as what is that guy's name called from Clover? But you know who I mean. Um he is a mix of them both, and it's a good mix. Like you can see that he obviously has the ability and the fighting talent to hold his own in a fight. How he will play against magicians that are really good at their craft will remain to be seen. But as he is now fighting just the monsters in the dungeon with the level that he's gone to so far, he's killing it. Like he doesn't seem to be struggling. He gets his hits in where he needs to. He manages to kill them. You know, yes, some of the Sentinel gave him a little bit of run around, but I believe that might have been his first like level 10 monster, which is understandable. But beyond that, could you ask for anything more? So I'm hoping that the rest of the anime lives up to the expectations that the first episode has given me in regards to what to expect. And I hope you guys will enjoy it as well. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for another recap.